my kākou from Kahilu Theater in Waimea on Hawaiʻi Island. You're listening to Hawaiʻi Radio Hour. I'm Kolby Akamu Moser, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Mileka Lincoln.
Aloha, my kākou.
In front of a live audience.
Yay! I promise, we didn't pipe that in. That was as live gets. Mahalo for listening and for being here. On today's show, we will be talking with Hawaiʻi Congresswoman Jill Tokuda about the impacts of the government shutdown.
For our ʻike kūpuna segment, we're going to be listening to Rowen Hufford talk about kapa making.
And we will also hear Kanani Kahaunaele from last year's Slack Key Guitar and Ukulele Festival.
And we will finish with a moʻolelo from Mahealani DuPont about developing a relationship with her birthplace.
News, ʻike kūpuna, mele, moʻolelo, and more.
All on today's episode of Hawaiʻi Radio Hour from Kahilu.
But first, the news. Aloha from Kahilu Theater. I'm Mileka Lincoln, and I'm here with my co-host, Kolby Akamu Moser.
We are so glad to have you listening to us today, Mileka, and we have a live studio audience.
I know! They're there, I promise. We didn't even have to pay them to start clapping for us. It was just on cue, on demand. It is one of those beautiful times in Waimea.
It is.
Fall is very slowly knocking on our door. It's kind of warm tonight.
It's warm tonight, but you can still feel that little chill in the air outside.
There was a little bit of it this weekend, that like little sneak peek.
I was telling my husband actually a couple of nights ago when we first moved back to Waimea about 10 years ago, we had this like falling in love with Waimea feeling, and I was just driving around and getting my Starbucks, and it felt so magical, and I was like, I felt that again.
I know.
It's something about that fall air, I think.
It's this time of year. I am OG enough to my time in Waimea, born and raised here, homestead. I remember this was the time of year that we would wake up, and on our way to school, you would have to walk through the crunchy grass because there was already frost. Do you guys remember that?
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes, we're gonna manifest that. We are calling upon the climate
frost.
change to change back to the mornings of waking up with frost in the fall. Yes, that was like my favorite time of year.
So cold, but not too cold.
So I don't know if you can say that you're from Waimea and ever feel too cold. I could be overspeaking. I should just talk for myself. There's not a single time where I have been like, oh no, more warm, please. It's just an excuse to like layer it all on, get cozy.
Those kids down at HPA coming straight out of the pool at like 7 o'clock at night,
they're too
wet.
Cold. They're too cold. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We'll give them their flowers where they're due. Absolutely. We again want to thank everyone who's joining us today for our live show and being able to share in this incredible space with us. And we look forward to doing this again on December 4th. Just head to kahilu.org for more information.
Mahalo for listening to the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour at Kahilu. We'll return after this quick break.
The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour has been made possible with the incredibly generous kākou of the Richard Smart Fund.
The Richard Smart Fund supports healthcare, education, and charities in the Waimea area on Hawaiʻi Island.
To learn more, please visit hawaiʻicommunityfoundation.org. Coming up in the show, our ʻike kūpuna segment.
ʻike is a very vigorous grower. It makes lots of pula, and I share with anybody who wants it. I've shared it over and over, and I still have plenty left.
Welcome back to Kahilu Theater and the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour.
The federal government has been shut down now for more than 2 weeks. Probably not news to anyone here. Naka sat down with Jill Tokuda, Hawaiʻi Island's representative in Congress, to discuss the impacts on this island.
Aloha, Congresswoman. So glad to be joining you via Zoom. We wish that you were here at Kahilu, but thank you for making the time. You're over in Honolulu right now, and we know you just returned from D.C., so we really appreciate you. It's been interesting talking with many of your constituents here who don't realize the government is shut down. They've been blissfully unaware. And should they remain blissfully unaware?
We never want to cause worry on anyone, but it's important people understand what's at stake right now because, Hawaii has the second highest number of federal workers in the country after Maryland. So we're talking about tens of thousands of individuals, many who are working day to day, helping out public service, whether it's TSA agents, whether it's air traffic control, but also let's think about our national parks. Okay, so many different workers, ag inspectors, food inspectors, right now, who many of them are working as essential workers and not getting paid. And then you have quite a few also who are furloughed. That uncertainty of when they're going to be able to get back to work, it hurts all of us because, right, we take care of each other here in Hawaii. So as much as I do know there are folks that don't realize we're in a government shutdown. We need folks first and foremost show some aloha out there right now who are having a very difficult time, but also understand what the fight is about. That's what's important for me, that this is about reopening government and restoring life healthcare for millions of Americans, including tens of thousands of people right here in Hawaii. That is so important to me.
Yeah. What do you tell people, those that are blissfully unaware of what's been going on?
Republicans have literally been on hiatus, on vacation from before the shutdown. I've been back no less than 2 times, sitting in an empty House chamber with my Democratic colleagues, with Republicans nowhere to be found. I literally just came back from Washington, D.C. Again, Republicans are still on vacation. They refuse to come back. Let's sit at the table. Let's negotiate like we have always done with every other shutdown threat or shutdown that the government has had. But most importantly, what's at stake? When people start to get those notices in the mail that their insurance premiums are going up, for many in Hawaii, we know it's hard already. Those premiums are going to be out of reach for a lot of people, and they're going to make that impossible choice to forego health coverage. This is important for folks, and so that's the fight right now.
Right. You were just talking about the healthcare, but I just wonder if you could just tell us why.
This is because Republicans control the White House, and they control the House and the Senate, and they refuse to talk to Democrats about how we can keep government open. They hold the gavels, they have all the power, and yet they have chosen, this is their shutdown. They've chosen to shut government down. Imagine $1 trillion in cuts that we just passed in the big ugly bill. I voted strongly against it. I fought against it.
Is that making sense to people when you talk to them?
Probably 1 degree of separation or less exists between someone being blissfully unaware of the government shutdown and why we're fighting and having someone close to them completely impacted by the cuts that took place in the big ugly bill that's literally hacked $200 billion in food money, $1.5 trillion in Medicaid and Medicare. We're talking about care for our kūpuna here. And remember, we just permanently passed tax credits, Republicans did, for billionaires just a few months ago.
There have been so many impacts to people here in this past year. What exactly is happening with the federal government?
For each person, it's different in terms of where the impact and the hurt lies. We've talked to a lot of folks that have lost federal dollars or grants, and they're scrambling to figure out how to make up that shortfall for a lot of unmet needs in the community. It could be research dollars. It could be for educational programs for, our minority serving institutions, which, as you know, was completely zeroed out and cut. We could be talking even to, as a result of the CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, $1 billion cut there. It hit, public television. It hit small radio stations in a way. It meant that a lot of the local documentaries, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander documentaries and films that were being funded through these programs, now completely zeroed out in many particular cases. It hits in different ways. I talked a lot about health and food, but it's daily lives and it's jobs, quite frankly. When you zero out millions of dollars in energy projects, that's not just taking away our ability to reduce electricity costs throughout our islands. And we already have some of the highest costs in the country. It's not about helping us to wean ourselves off fossil fuels and, expand our renewable portfolio. That's jobs that people will lose. So there has been so many ripple effects as a result of the constant cuts, as well as the mass firings we've seen of federal employees since day one of this administration, and now weaponizing this shutdown, trying to use it as a weapon to say, well, we can cut positions. Literally right now for special education, which takes care of 10% of all children in the United States and many here in Hawaii, and we've had our challenges with special education, only 95% of their staff remain from all the cuts that have taken place since January.
Yeah.
That's huge.
What do you tell those people, that have been directly impacted by changes in DC?
We've been fighting. I can't tell you how many letters we have signed to the administration. I have sent letters opposing a lot of these cuts. In a few cases, I've also made sure that they were bipartisan. I was able to actually find Republicans that have agreed that these cuts are unacceptable, that the administration is doing, but it's letters, it's introducing legislation and bills. What we really need right now, which is why we ask people for stories, and we ask them for stories of family members and friends from across the country that are experiencing pain and hardship as a result of these inhumane cuts. We need to find some courage. We need to find Republicans who are willing to stand up and say that, hey, I'm a Republican, but you can't continue these cuts that are hurting our constituents, that you're hurting our people. So when we ask for stories and we ask people to reach out across the country to their ohana that live in other states, it's because at the end of the day, we need to make sure we're holding every member of Congress accountable to really working on behalf of their constituents. And right now, for those that live in red states, and we have a lot of kama'aina that live in some red pockets of this country, they have members of Congress who aren't even showing up for work. And that's unacceptable. They've got members of Congress who are voting against their food money, voting against their health insurance access, voting against minority serving institutions which supports Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. There needs to be a stop to that. And we need to have them reach out and help us tell their stories of pain, but also opportunity if we restore them, and hopefully find some courageous Republicans willing to stand with us against all of these cuts that we're seeing.
So how are you navigating this? Because right now, might seemingly makes right.
This is a difficult time to navigate. It's a frustrating, angering. I know a lot of people are frustrated that this government shutdown has gone on so long. I'm right there with them. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I want to get back to work. We can be back in Congress right now. There's a lot of things that we can take up. For example, like telehealth reauthorizations to make sure people can actually access telehealth, especially kūpuna through Medicare, that there will be reimbursements. Right now, a lot of the health centers and clinics have stopped offering that because it expired. Those authorities to be able to offer and get reimbursed for telehealth expired on September 30th, 2025. Let's talk about even some of those little things that are impactful for everyday people in rural communities like ours, especially for our kūpuna population or those who live in remote areas of the state and the country. We could be doing that work right now. They're refusing to come back to even have a hearing, to even have a session where we vote and actually pass something over to the Senate. So it's very, very frustrating. But what I'm trying to do right now are find any and all low-hanging fruit opportunities. I'm looking for Republicans that will say, hey, yeah, Trump administration, this is not good for Indian country. Yep. This is not good for Alaska Natives. This is not good for Native Hawaiians. So let's join together. That's really what I'm doing right now, is trying to find those things we can agree on and try to push those forward as much as possible.
Obviously, having to think through some of the worst case scenarios with this shutdown, what's been crossing your mind when you've been thinking about this?
It's the most basics. So from the very beginning, I've been calling the unions. I've been trying to talk to as many members as possible about where their pain points are at. I've literally called the utilities in terms of what kind of programs, grace periods are they offering for folks that might have hardship being able to pay their bills. I've called even the credit unions. What kind of payroll assistance programs do they have? Zero interest loans for people that just need to bridge to the next time they get a paycheck so they can pay their bills. Talking to the food banks in terms of what do they anticipate seeing in terms of an increase in particular need, talking to the funders out there, philanthropy, about what we may expect and where we're going to need them to potentially bridge the gap. But it's been most important to me to try to reach out to our federal workers. And I'll tell you, it's hard. We connect with our federal ohana that's impacted we make sure that we take care of them during this tough time.
So that comes back to the worst case scenario. At what point does this end up shifting and gets closer to a resolution?
In the past shutdowns, when too many airports were starting to see significant delays or closures, that usually helped to move people towards some kind of resolution. If you ask me, what is that point? We're at that point. We're at that point already. We've been at that point for 16 days where this is too much for any American to have to deal with. They should not have to deal with this. There is no reason why they can't come back, sit at a table, negotiate a way to reopen government, save healthcare, which, by the way, will benefit more Republican states than even Democratic states. We are already at that crisis point.
Yeah. I have one real quick last question that I want to ask. Obviously, we're in Waimea and we're in the shadow of Mauna Kea. There's been talk about what the future of TMT is regarding the budget. What are the actual facts?
Well, the last I saw, I used to be on the Ways and Means Committee as a chair there. So as you know, there's a House version and a Senate version. And my understanding is the House version doesn't have any money for TMT. It's a single site, and that would be, reflecting Chile. And then you have the Senate version, which my understanding has, I believe, $50 million for both sites, for the program, plural, to include both TMT and Chile. So right now, it is a question, as always, when you go into a conference, when you sit down, House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans together, where will you end up? And as you know, the president, I believe, had actually been pushing a single site, if not a wipeout completely of all of this. But we'll see what actually happens at the end of the day. This will be about negotiating between the House and the Senate. There are different versions at this particular point. I think the duality that the Senate offers gives us a lot more opportunity to keep doors open. But it will come down to negotiation. It'll come down in many cases, as always with appropriations bills, it'll come down to money. But right now, I do believe that the one that creates the most opportunity and the ability for continued dialogue in Hawaii and engagement in Hawaii, which is what we need, is actually the Senate version that supports the entire program with both telescopes and provides some funding for it.
And I know there's a lot going on, and we really mahalo you for the time.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Mahalo again to Representative Jill Tokuda and to our co-host, Naka Nathaniel.
We'll be right back after this short break. You're listening to Hawaiʻi Radio Hour.
The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour, and more importantly, the Hawaiʻi Storytellers Fellowship, is supported by Kamehameha Schools.
Kamehameha Schools has provided funding for the Hawaiʻi Storytellers Fellowship, a program that helps train, coach, and nurtures Hawaii's next generation of trusted storytellers.
It's a mouthful every time we say it. I got you, girl. To learn more about Kamehameha Schools, please visit ksbe.edu.
Later on in the show, we'll be hearing mele from Kanani Kahaunaele.
We'll return in just a moment.
Aloha, I'm Naka, Nathaniel.
And I'm Kolby Akamu, Moser. Welcome back to Hawaiʻi Radio Hour here at Kahilu Theater.
Rowen Hufford was on the show a few weeks ago to talk about her quilts on display here at Kahilu's latest cultural heritage exhibit featuring textiles of Mokuʻokeawe, Hawaiʻi Island.
Quilts aren't the only textile Rowen has spent years making and mastering. She's also a kapa practitioner based here in Waimea. Kapa is a type of traditional Hawaiian textile made by pounding the wauke plant, which was brought over by kūpuna kahiki, or early Hawaiian ancestors.
Mahealani duPont sat down with Rowen to talk about her kapa. Here's Rowen Hufford sharing her ʻike.
A long time ago, when our forefathers traveled in canoes here, and they had the foresight to carry the plants that they knew would be important in sustaining their life. They included wauke. And so they grew the wauke right alongside the kalo, right, as a perimeter to the food patch. And it occurred to me after a while that that's exactly what I had been doing. The wauke was on the side of my vegetable field. And I could do both, take care of my mother's wauke, and I could grow my lettuce, spinach, salad mix, beets, blah, blah, blah. And that could all fit together in my life. And I had enough time to look after both of them, and time to eat, time to sell the food that I grew. So I found that inspiring, that I could be doing the same thing that my kūpuna had done. And so my students know that once they become adept at harvesting, processing the fibers, beading, understanding dyes, and so on and so forth. But they also had to grow their own wauke too. So we always have enough. Wauke is a very vigorous grower. It makes lots of pula, and I share with anybody who wants it. I've shared it over and over, and I still have plenty left. My mother left me with many resources, and once she completed all the projects that she had on her list, she just kind of put her tools down and said, I'm pau. And you take the tools, you take the kua and the hohoa and the iekuku to your house, and you beat the kapa at your house. You don't beat at my house. It's all yours. And you make decisions about it. And the biggest resource was the patch of wauke. And at that time she had two. And I already knew that I had to take care of it, because she would make me take care of it. When she needed wauke to beat kapa, I had to go get it for her. And sometimes it was not the right time of year, and we had to discover that it was hard to harvest. So I was learning from the wauke itself. My mother couldn't tell me that part of it, just that she needed it when she wanted it. And so I had to figure that out. As the farmer, I had to understand when the plants were ready to be harvested, how to grow them better. And I realized, because wauke is a very vigorous grower, that I couldn't do it by myself. And a number of mainly young women would find me at the farmer's market. They would go to the Gallery of Great Things and find out, oh, there's some kapa there. Who's that person, and where is she? And at the Gallery of Great Things, they would say, oh, she's over at the farmer's market. And they would come over and they'd say, you have to teach me how to do this. And I went, yeah, right. And so after a time and a number, I started a list with their names and their telephone numbers. And finally I said, okay, well, come over and we'll start beating together. And so that's how they learned how to take care of the wauke patch, and that's how it started.
Mm-hmm. And how many haumana do you think have come under you, if you could put a number to it, or if you know exactly the number?
I don't know exactly, but I do have it written down. I haven't kept it up to date. I would say more than 50. And of course, there's lots of people who see me in a public space at a demonstration and who are inspired to do it. Maybe they don't learn from me, but they learn from somebody else who lives closer to them. My biggest asset is the wauke. If I didn't have that, I couldn't do this. And then the second is that she gifted me the tools that she used. And even those tools, she was learning about making the tools. And she'd have to work with people who were good at making tools, you know, with woodworkers, and she would have to source wood for the kua. And so she involved other people in the community. When her kua, my father built, basically he cut it out of a koa log, which she sourced from Mike Tomic, who is a firefighter, and he had in his line of business, he had come across this koa log, and he gifted it to my mom, and my dad made the kua for her. That was the first one. So other woodworkers made tools for her. My students learned early on that they had to make their own tools if they wanted to do this on their own time. Not, you know, coming to Waimea could be interesting, you know, weekly, and that's what we did. We had a weekly gathering, and but what happened was there weren't enough tools for everybody. So one of my students and her husband they became woodworkers and tool makers, and they acquired a whole set of tools just to make kapa making tools, and they're really good at it. So that's the first thing. So you have to have your wauke, and the second is you have to have your tools.
And then what would you say that maybe the third thing is?
You have to have time. You have to have time to do this.
Mahalo again to Rowen Hufford for sharing her ʻike with us. You can see her kapa and quilts on display at Kahilu until early November.
We'll be right back. The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour is supported by the Abigail Kawananakoa Foundation.
The Abigail Kawananakoa Foundation is dedicated to preserving traditional Hawaiian culture while empowering Hawaiian people.
The foundation is the residual beneficiary of the Princess's Trust and is her lasting legacy and her ultimate gift to her people.
To learn more about the Abigail Kawananakoa Foundation, please visit kawananakoafoundation.org. Welcome back to Kahilu Theater in Waimea and the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour. We're so grateful that you're taking time to listen to us.
And if you're on the road right now, we appreciate you listening, especially if you're cruising past Mahukona on a Koni Pule Highway.
The 23rd annual Ukulele and Slack Key Guitar Festival is coming up on November 14th and 15th here at Kahilu. The event showcases an all-star lineup and celebrated slack key and ukulele musicians like Keola Beamer and Ledward Ka'apana. There are 2 nights of music and a 2-day makeke happening across the way at the Kahilu Town Hall. For tickets, visit kahilu.org.
This week we are featuring an artist who performed at last year's festival, Kanani Kahaunaele.
Hui, aloha mai kākou. Aloha no. What a pleasure to be here in Waimea with all of you. Aloha no ova o Kanani Kahaunaele. Oh my goodness. Good to be back on the prestigious Kahilu Theater stage. And tonight's songs, I wanted to share a few that I've written and one that my best friend wrote. And then eventually I'll call all the rest of the gang to come out and we can have a big old kanikapila. That's one of the things I was looking forward to, and I got invited to come and share some songs with you. It was like, ooh, I get to spend time and talk story with all these all these wonderful musicians. And so this first song, let's go to Kiholo. How many of you are aware of the beauty of Kiholo? Oh my goodness. I said, oh yeah, when I got there several years ago, I said, oh, I cannot leave here without writing a song. And so here's a song that talks about a weekend that I spent with my Hakumele students from UH Hilo. I took them on a camping trip and I said, your ticket out of here is to create songs. And so I figure I better make a good one for example. And so this was my contribution, and thanks to the Hind Ohana for letting us hang out at their place. So it's a song called Kiholo. Kiholo, I kamalu kiave. Mahalo anui.
Mahalo to Kanani Kahaunaele.
Kainani will host a Mele as Edutainment workshop on November 15th, where participants will learn 3 mele of Hawai'i Island. For tickets, go to kahilu.org.
We'll be back with a moʻolelo about finding yourself again.
Support for the ʻike kūpuna and moʻolelo portions of the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour comes from Kate Bell and Tom Blackburn of Deviance from the Norm.
Without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible.
We will return in a moment.
Aloha, I'm Mileka Lincoln.
And I'm Kolby Akamu Moser, and welcome back to Kahilu Theater and the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour.
Mahealani duPont shared her moʻolelo with us here on stage at Kahilu live during our last show in September.
Here's Mahealani duPont talking about developing pilina, or relationship to place.
Imagine we're 8 years old and we're frolicking in Waimea. There's a glimmer in the slight of your eye that sees the magic in the world around you. You wave back at the plants as their loose limbs flutter towards you in the breeze. You practice your baas because you desperately want to talk to the sheep and goats in your backyard. You collect critters of all kinds found in the nooks and spaces your curious little hands were created to find. And you practice taking care of living beings. You also write a poem that goes, "Nature is crying just as we speak, so please make nature not as weak. We can clean nature and make her smile. If we do not pollute a mile, please, oh please, stop chittering and chattering about not littering. You will understand you are part of an ecosystem, part of a complex system that sustains life, and that also requires an awareness of the ways that we interact with it and among it. These are our relations, our relationships, our pilina." Now, I wanted to take us back in time, particularly to a time where I felt, and I'm sure many of us felt when we were 8, the mere joy of life, the magic. If you couldn't tell, that was a poem that I wrote when I was 8 for fun, or at least my idea of fun. I remember writing it, memorizing it, and reciting it to anyone whose ears I saw. Like, it was my personal mission to be the crusader of anti-littering at Waimea School. I share this poem because it recently popped back into my brain again after probably, over a decade, and I started to understand it in a different light. When I was a child, I realized I had this understanding of nature or the environment as a person, and for whatever reason, there was this little spark in my brain that told me, do as little harm as possible onto this world. So I did things like be vegetarian in secrecy from my parents, by bartering bologna slices from my sandwiches to my classmates in exchange for their vegetables, or writing poems about littering. And also, I just marveled in the beauty of my home here on Mokuʻokeawe, Hawai'i Island. I didn't necessarily know it then, but I was building up practices on how to be in relationship to place by seeing its people, which are not just humans, how to be in community in a kind of ecological way. I remember feeling a true sense of belonging at that age, and a stark difference in the embrace of the environment herself when I moved back home to my birthplace here in Waimea, compared to a few years prior spent in Arizona. It felt like a real homecoming. But, as I got older, my sense of belonging in place that once felt so strong started to waver under my own questioning and allowing myself to let in noise from, every direction around me. A few years ago, after I moved home from college and a year on the East Coast, I was struggling. I was struggling with my mental health, which was impacting my physical health, and then my ability to just go outside. That 8-year-old with so much joy for life, whose world used to be filled with the whole spectrum of colors, was stuck inside, clattering to be let out. So I asked myself, when did I lose the ability to have reverence for all life, including my own. My motivation to take care of myself was not enough to really keep me going, so I needed to reframe what self-care not only felt like, but what it looked like to me. I reflected on the concept of self, and in doing so, I was reminded of who I am, and it's really simple. Fundamentally, I am a beautiful amalgamation of all of my ancestors. My goal in life, in general, is really simple. It's just to be a good ancestor. So I realized that the way I was taking care of myself then, my self-care, was not allowing me to be a good ancestor. To take better care was to take better care of the vessel of my tupuna, my ancestors, and then be able to show up better in the world around me. So self during this time began to take on another meaning, which was community. Seeing the threads of lineages that I belonged to spread out and weave around me positioned me back in the ecosystem, the fabric of life. I thought community care is self-care. Being in service is self-care. So I looked for opportunities to be in service and nurture the tupuna in me. Joining a halau hula was something I was especially yearning for. And with that came a fear, of course, a general embarrassment, because the last time I consistently danced was around the same time that I wrote that poem. So I knew I was definitely rusty, but a bigger thought lingered. Can I belong? Will I belong? To be in service is a privilege. That's something my kumu hula, kumu kuvalu, says to her halau, Vaikaunu, often to ground us. When I first joined, she said, you know, we dance for a community. We don't dance for tourists. And I said, that's exactly what I'm here for. So when it came time for me to make lei kuahu, which is one of our hula traditions, I spent the whole week leading up to it asking myself, what kind of lei should I make? To make a lei kuahu, there's a lot, but one of the things is you need to go through the layers of relationships or pilina that exist around you. First, naturally, you go check your yard. Build a relationship to your home aina. Okay, if you get nothing in your yard, go to your neighbors. Build a relationship with them. Then, okay, if neighbors don't get anything either, you go visit the spaces that you tend to in the outer aina, like the forests and the parks. You build a relationship with them. Kumu kuvalu reminds us of reciprocity in this process. You care for these places and plants in return because they care for us, not just in the environment, but spiritually too. So after anxiously going to sleep because I still had not figured out what kind of lei to make, I had a dream the night before I had to make it. In the dream, I was sitting on a grassy hillside, and a woman who felt so familiar, like home, sat down next to me. She sensed my worry and asked in a warm, steady voice, "Do you listen to koi'a?" And I thought, and I looked at her and I said, "No, I don't, but I will now." And I woke up and I knew that I was just visited by a tupuna. I didn't recognize her, but I could feel it. And she told me what lei to make, and eventually I came to see her as telling me how to feel belonging. So I went all around Waimea to forage koi'a, which is a different tree from koa. You know, they're related, but different. Koi'a has these beautiful sickle-shaped leaves and these tiny little yellow puffball-like flowers that kind of look like miniature versions of the trees that are in the Lorax. So I went through the layers of relations around me to forage, you know, starting with my yard, my neighbors, then out in the world. I made the lei koi'a by braiding humbly chosen leaves between la'i or tea leaf. And after bringing it to hula, we sat around in a circle, our pa'us or skirts sprawling around us. And we talked among the hula sisters and kumus. I shared my anxieties, my dream, the process, and then I found myself crying. I felt so much gratitude to be in that space, to share tradition, and have the privilege of perpetuating it, but also an insecurity because I'm not Hawaiian, and I didn't really feel like I could belong. I was taking up space. So at the same time, the lingering struggle that I was having with feeling belonging prevailed, and I struggled to accept that I can belong. During this circle, one of my hula sisters turned to me and she said, "You are a kama of this aina. You belong here." As a child of this land, this aina raised me, nurtured me, taught me how to revere life and see the environment as a person. This aina allowed me to meet her. And then I was reminded of the lineages that I belong to. I am Maʻohi, or Tahitian. Our tupuna across the Pacific have had pilina relationships since time immemorial. There's always been navigation between our islands, and I realized for me to not feel a sense of belonging here is to erase all of those lineages that brought me to exactly where I am today. And through hula, I belong to new lineages. And that again reminds me of my position in this larger ecosystem. So although halau practice is only for a couple hours a week, the process of making lei kuahu perpetuated hula outside of those designated hours. And it prompted us haumana, or students, to build active pilina relationships to the people and places around us. The process of making this lei prompted us to live culture, not just practice it. So after all this, I realized I was asking myself the wrong questions before. I shouldn't have been asking, can I belong or will I belong? I should have been asking, what can I do to belong? Because a sense of belonging is an action that requires care. Belonging to Hawaii has allowed me to learn more about my own indigeneity, being Maʻohi, being Tahitian, about being a good ancestor. By having the privilege to be in community here, I've learned that belongingness is something that is fostered through relationships. Belonging is something that is fostered through service. In Reo Maʻohi, or Tahitian language, ohi, which is the root of our native word Maʻohi for ourselves, means sprout or offshoot, like in ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi, oha, or the little offshoots on the kalo. So this is the aina that I was planted on and has allowed me to ohi, or sprout, since I was 8. My name is Mahealani duPont, and I am from Waimea.
Mahalo to Mahealani, who is also our Hawaii Storytellers Fellow, for that heartfelt story and for getting us to think a little bit deeper about our pilina to each other and our island home.
Again, Mahealani, you are so exceptional. We appreciate you being a storyteller here at Kahilu.
We have another live show coming up here at Kahilu on December 4th.
Don't forget to get your tickets.
Kahilu.org. The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour is grateful for the Stupskis Foundation's support of the Hawaii Storytellers Fellowship.
The Stupski Foundation is a private foundation returning its assets to the communities it calls home in Hawaii and the San Francisco Bay Area.
The foundation partners with community leaders who are building a more equitable future to support just and resilient health, food, and higher education systems for all.
Because change can't wait. Okay. You guys probably don't know who the mastermind is behind all of our incredible social media, but she is sitting here live in the flesh tonight, Kolby, with help from our Hawaii Storytellers Fellows, Gillian, Santiago, and Mahealani duPont.
We're having a lot of fun with our Instagram feed, so if you don't follow us, Hawaiʻi Radio Hour, please follow us. We have people tuning in here in Hawaii, and we have a special ask. Perhaps you can share the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour with your friends and family across the ocean and help them feel a little bit more connected to the Pai'aina Hawaiʻi.
I love that. It's easy to do. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're here to help you connect with home.
I mean, I think we're a pretty good companion for those long drives.
You can find us by searching for the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour on Spotify and all other podcast outlets. And again, round of applause for our social media team, please. Mahalo to everyone for listening. We want to mahalo especially those who made this show possible. Representative Jill Tokuda, Rowen Hufford, Kanani Kahaunaele, and Mahealani duPont, all for getting in front of the microphone.
Behind the scenes, we want to mahalo Gillian Santiago, Mahealani duPont, and Naka for their help writing and producing the show.
As always, a special thanks to the team here at Kahilu. There are so many great events on the calendar this season at Kahilu Theater, and you can find them all at kahilu.org. You can also check out the latest installment of Kahilu's annual Cultural Heritage Exhibition Series in Kahilu's galleries. The show runs until November 2nd.
And if you're away from the islands but don't want to miss out on the performances at Kahilu, you can find shows on Kahilu TV. You can stream last year's Ukulele and Slot Key Guitar Festival. Go to kahilu.tv.
We're interested in hearing from you as well. Send us an email or voice memo to aloha@hawaiiradiohour.com. Again, that's aloha@hawaiiradiohour.com.
Here in the show, we'd like to say e ho'olohe I ko kākou moku. Listen to our island home.
E ho'olohe I ko kākou moku.
A hui ho and aloha.